Hello, everybody, and welcome to History/Law Bite number 195, dated February the 25th, 2021. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. This History/Law Bite is entitled Julliard versus Greenman, 110 U.S. 421, 1884. Julliard versus Greenman was the last of what were known as the legal tender cases. They were decisions by the Supreme Court of the United States that spoke on the constitutionality of the federal government's ability to issue paper money as valid currency. We all know that paper money made its debut during the American Civil War, and there were many people at that time and not long afterwards who doubted the constitutionality of the federal government's power to do that. Of course, prior to that, money had been issued exclusively in solid metallic form, not as paper notes. So the matter was very, very, very controversial, at its outset. So in Julliard versus Greenman, we see Mr. Julliard deliver, upon request from Mr. Greenman, some 100 bales of cotton, to him for a total sum of $5,122. All right. $22 of that was paid in regular coin, and the remaining $5,100 would be paid with paper money, U.S. Treasury notes. However, Mr. Julliard refused to accept that paper money as valid. All right. He contended for all intents and purposes that this was money issued during the Civil War. All right. And these notes, in his humble opinion, were no longer appropriate to be used for payment of debts, public and private. Even though Congress specifically in 1878 had enacted a law for providing for the reissuing of U.S. Treasury notes, no longer requiring their retirement. So obviously it was the intent of Congress to maintain using paper currency for payment of debts, public and private. So Mr. Julliard took Mr. Greenman to federal court in a diversity suit. All right, arguing what I just mentioned, that the defense essentially was basing his case upon an antiquated law enacted during the Civil War, allowing Congress to issue paper notes in spite of the 1878 law in which Congress maintained that the paper notes would continue to be used, and reissued as valid payment for debts, public and private. So the lower federal court ruled against Julliard, prompting him to appeal the matter to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the issue that faced the justices, simply put, was whether or not the federal government had such power to continue authorizing the use of paper money in peacetime. All right, as the previous legal tender cases, Knox versus Lee and Parker versus Davis, were surrounding the federal government's power to issue that money in wartime. So with that were the legal tender acts, authorizing federal government to issue paper money, were they constitutional in peacetime? And the Supreme Court, in an 8-1 decision via Justice Horace Gray, ruled that the legal tender acts were absolutely, positively constitutional in peacetime, just as much as in wartime. Logically, Gray reasoned that the federal government, had broad power based on its abilities in Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 2 and 5 in the U.S. Constitution. Clause 2 says to borrow money on the credit of the United States, and Clause 5 says to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and a foreign coin, and fix a standard of weights and measures. That the federal government had this obvious power to issue paper currency, not only in wartime, but in peacetime, making it perfectly legitimate to buy things with this paper currency, as well as to satisfy all debts, public and private. All right. The court affirmed this fact, resting, the constitutionality of such measures also on prior decisions regarding the constitutionality of the legal tender acts. Okay, so the decision of the court was that, quite simply, once again, that Congress certainly had the authority to issue paper money as valid currency in peacetime as well as wartime. That the federal government had that broad authority, to borrow money on the credit of the United States and to establish a national currency, all essentially part of its Article 1, Section 8 enumerated power, all right? What type of national currency the federal government would establish, all right, was entirely up to them, all right? But they had this authority, specifically enumerated authority, and it could not be undermined, essentially, by private citizens who didn't have any power to decide what was legal money and what was not. That was the province of the federal government alone. And they had the power, to issue paper notes as currency, all right? Not only in wartime, but in peacetime. And so that is the essence of this decision, all right? Now, everyone didn't go along with that, though. Justice Stephen Field issued a biting dissent from the majority opinion in this case, arguing that the framers of the Constitution had all but precluded the federal government's ability to issue paper notes as currency, specifically by continually using the word coin when money was referenced in the Constitution, obviously to him referring to metallic coins. In addition to that, Field argued that, paper money would not obviously carry the same weight and value of metallic coin. All right. He did not accept, in any of these legal tender cases, that it was constitutional for the federal government to issue paper notes as currency, that the only type of currency that was and was to forever be acceptable was metallic coin. All right. Obviously, his opinion did not carry the day, as he was the lone dissenter in this case. So from this case, we have it established that the federal government, has the constitutional power to issue paper notes as U.S. currency, not only in peacetime, but in wartime. All right. And thus, from this case, it is no longer in dispute as to whether or not the federal government has the power to issue paper notes as U.S. currency. All right. So that, folks, is Julliard versus Greenman, 110 U.S. 421, 1884. All right. If you have any questions or controversies about this decision, leave them down below and I'll be happy to answer them. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so right now. I would greatly appreciate it. Your support means more than you'll ever know. Just click that little red subscribe button and that little bell right next to it, and we'll be in business. Thank you again so much for listening to this. Take care, stay safe out there, and I will talk to you at the next bite. Peace.